Hello, and welcome to Centennial College at the library. If you're just joining us, you can find us at library.centennialcollege.ca. And if you're entering our virtual library collection, you can do so by entering your MyCentennial login credentials. Today we'll be exploring the question, what is plagiarism? And also, what is academic misconduct? What is plagiarism? It sounds like the new four-letter word, plage, or with more emphasis, plage. It sounds ominous. As you might expect, the Oxford English Dictionary is a good place to go. Let's hear what it says about plagiarism. Plagiarism is the action or practice of taking someone else's work, idea, etc., and passing it off as one's own. Literary theft. Wouldn't you know it, the library has access to the Oxford English Dictionary. Let's have a look. We'll migrate to the library's homepage and we'll open up a collection. We'll enter the OED. Oxford English Dictionary. And here we go. Let's try another word. Let's see what the OED has to say about integrity. By the look of things, there's plenty to say. Let's have a look at this one. 3B. Integrity is the soundness of moral principle, the character of uncorrupted virtue, especially in relation to truth and fair dealing, uprightness, honesty, sincerity. My, that is a lot to live up to. Let's carry on. Steering clear of plagiarism starts with good citation practice. On that note, let's begin by having a look at a couple multiple choice questions. A reference list, you know, that thing that comes at the end of your assignment, at the end of your essay. A reference list is vital because A, it is worth 5% of your mark. B, to show that you are an active participant in the community of research. C, to inform your reader or readers of the sources of some of the ideas and words that you have used. D, all of the above. Well, I know what I would choose. All of the above looks pretty good, especially that extra 5%. Anyhow, in the sober light of day, I guess we have to go with B and C. Let's try part 2. A reference list is vital. A, to inform your reader or readers of the origin of ideas and words that you have used, in case you missed it the first time around. B, to allow you to continue your research and recall some of the sources that you may wish to explore and follow in more detail. C, to ensure a better grade on your assignment. D, all of the above. Well, I'm sure you know how I feel about this one. Let's go with C, to ensure a better grade on your assignment. Well, if you were in fact a little bit unsure about the answers to those two questions, there is always the publication manual of the American Psychological Association. It answers the question, there's a book for that, right? Indeed there is. The publication manual, in all of its 272-page glory, and a new 7th edition to boot, is just the thing for you. It captures APA in all of its nitty and gritty, and, as you might expect, is available in the library's collections. You can, in fact, get your hands on a copy through our grab and go service. You can even get it today. Well, maybe not today, but in the near future. However, if you are like me and do not really relish the thought of scrolling through 272 pages of style, you can always take advantage of the library's APA Short Guide, which features, among other things, the Academic Writer Program. Let's have a look. We can return to the library's homepage and have a look at the APA guide by following the Library Guides tab, scrolling through the alphabetical list until we arrive at APA. APA Style, waiting for you. As I mentioned, you have access to the Academic Writer Program. I'll let you explore this on your own. However, what it does, it takes APA and divides it into smaller pieces that are easier to manage. You can discover all kinds of things about citing your sources and structuring your reference list. You can also rely on the tabs on the left-hand side of our guide. You can see what it's like to reference books, articles, websites, images, and so forth. We'll open this Articles tab. While this is not an exhaustive list, it does present formats that are most used by students, such as something like this: how to reference an article in a magazine or newspaper. You see you have access to the standard form, an actual example, and then information on in-text citation. Let's return. As I mentioned, Academic Writer Program has several small, short tutorials that take you through all kinds of things APA, bit by bit. Now let's turn to my all-time favorite bibliography. I'd let you read it quietly to yourself, but it's much too good for that. Let's read it together. Bibliography. In a work such as this, it is not uncommon to be presented in the later pages with a long list of reference material the author employed to assist and inspire him in his endeavors. And it only seems correct and fitting that these sources receive due credit. But, at the risk of appearing impudent, I'll not present such a list for Wine Taster's Secrets. This is not due to any lack of appreciation for those wine authors whose works I have read with respect and admiration, but because the list is so long. At this point, it would be almost impossible for me to determine which bit of information and data came from which source. Perhaps it is sufficient for me to admit that little in this book is original. It is founded on works, judgments, and opinions of innumerable wine lovers, many who penned their experiences and thoughts long before I came to be. What more can I say? Now that we have read this bibliography together, raise your hand if some of this or any of it sounds familiar. I know I can raise my hand. Perhaps you're wondering, is this a real bibliography, or did the author just make it up for fun? Let's find out. Wouldn't you know it, Wine Taster's Secrets is a real book, penned by a real individual, penned by Mr. Andrew Sharp. And here it is, the bibliography appearing next to the first index page. Now maybe you're asking yourself the question, how can Mr. Sharp actually do this, actually publish such a thing? Well, he clearly has not read the APA style manual. I guess the only answer to the question is this. If you're a wine taster, and a really good one, and you've had a long day of tasting wine, then perhaps you can write something like this. However, it's different for the rest of us. So let's move on. Let's ask ourselves, is plagiarism everywhere? Plagiarism is everywhere. Is there really a plagiarism epidemic? Really and truly? Or is there plagiarism just in books like Mr. Sharp's? If you search in the library collection using phrases like plagiarism epidemic, you'd be amazed. Here are some headlines that surface. These are just a few among many. Plagiarism, a silent epidemic in scientific writing. An epidemic of plagiarism. Taking the work out of homework. Plagiarism and ghostwriting, the rise in academic misconduct. Let's explore this epidemic by first looking at well-known names. And we'll do it in the form of a multiple choice question. Dr. Jane Goodall, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Chris Spence. These individuals are A. Characters in a new Margaret Atwood novel. B. Individuals whose reputations and careers were damaged by their plagiarizing activities. C. Civil rights activists. D. Affiliated with the international charity Doctors Without Borders. Well, I wish I could say the answer was A, C, or D, but unfortunately the answer is B. These three are individuals whose reputations and careers were damaged by their plagiarizing activities. Even Toronto's own Dr. Chris Spence. If you're wondering about the plagiarizing of Dr. Chris Spence, you can always have a look at my own library guide on the subject. Let's do that for a minute. We'll return to the library's homepage. And follow through into another library guide. Here we go. Let's use the alphabetical list again and scroll through to plagiarism. As you see, there's plenty of guides to look at, to explore on your own. Here we go. Plagiarism, a study in the spectacular fall of Dr. Chris Spence. We won't look at it very much. We'll just summarize and see that there's many things to explore. I'll let you do that on your own. Let's return. As you might imagine, plagiarism occurs at levels where the names of individuals are recognizable. However, let's talk about the banality of plagiarism and academic dishonesty. In other words, everyday plagiarism that occurs in the academy, in colleges and universities, and that occurs by professors that, although you don't recognize their names, they are individuals that should know better. Let's start by exploring an article, or rather a chapter written by Professor Hollis. Her chapter is Ghost Students and the New Wave of Online Cheating for Community College Students. We'll explore it like this. On page 2 of her chapter, Professor Hollis wrote the following: King and Case, 2014. In other words, she's referring to another article. King and Case, 2014, noted an increase of students who felt it was easy to cheat online. In 2009, 63% of students perceived it was easy to cheat, but in 2017, 74% felt cheating in an online exam was easy. Now let's take a minute, and can you spot the problem? Or is there in fact any problem to spot? Yes, indeed there is. Unless King and Case are fortune tellers who can see into the future, it is impossible for them to speak about something that happened in 2017 when they wrote and published their article in 2014. When I asked Professor Hollis about this, she wrote back the following: Hello, I will pass along your message to the editor. Perhaps the date was a typo, but you are referencing something that 3 other reviewers did not. Thank you for writing, LPH. In this example, this typo on page 2 was missed by the author, and it was missed by 3 other reviewers. So, when in doubt, blame the reviewers. Leave it to a librarian to spot the problem. Let's move on to a more serious example. Even if the last example was a typo, here is something that takes us in a new direction. An article, Observing and Deterring Social Cheating on College Exams, written by no less than 3 professors, has the following problem. In the introduction, I'll draw your attention to just one sentence. Let's read. Jordan, 2001, found that in a particular semester, over 31% of students claimed to have cheated on at least one exam. This sentence seems alarming, but fine as it is. However, if you skip through to the reference list, you'll notice that there is no mention of Jordan 2001. In this case, the authors have said a factual reference, and they have not provided the source. When I asked one of the authors about it, they wrote, "Yikes! I cannot believe we left the citation out of the paper. We cited this article in a prior paper, and it appears the citation did not get into our submission. I am also amazed that the journal editors and copy editor did not notice this error." Once again, when in doubt, blame the editors. Well, the plot thickens. Reading further in the article, I noticed the following. The same authors write, Wilson, 1999, reports that 117 freshman students emailed answers to one another during an exam. Can you imagine 117 freshman students? That is quite the fact. And indeed, what we have here is a reference to this fact. In the reference list, the authors cite Wilson R., 1999. Colleges urge to better define academic integrity and to stress its importance. Unfortunately, this reference is to an article that has nothing to say about the 117 freshman students. They are entirely different. So in this case, an incorrect reference has been used to justify a fact. The plot thickens still. When I asked the authors about it, they wrote to me, "Hey, see the following article." They referred me to, one of the things they did was refer to me another article by Baker, Berry, and Thornton, Student Attitudes on Academic Integrity Violations. As it turns out, this exact same mistake, the exact same problem with Wilson, was replicated in this separate article as well. Two articles quoted the fact about the 117 students and referenced the exact same incorrect article. As it turns out, this is a true fact, and it was written in an article by another Wilson. So now that we've discussed an element of the banality of everyday plagiarism among academics, among professors, even though we do not recognize some of their names, they are individuals who should know better. So carrying on, would it surprise you that there's plagiarism and academic misconduct occurring right here in our very own Centennial College? Here's one example of the banality of plagiarism in our own institution. This is a screen capture of a dictionary that was returned to us, the Oxford Portuguese Mini Dictionary. It's unusual in the fact that when it was returned, a page slipped out. On the page, there were helpful notes glued to it. And as you might expect, there were helpful notes glued to other pages in the dictionary as well. What could possibly have happened next? Well, in the world of the library, we have a record of students who return items. And so, in theory, we could have alerted the student's professor. Also, of course, while the library frowns upon academic misconduct and plagiarism, we also frown upon the destruction of library property. In this instance, one could only imagine what happened next. Now that we've discussed some of the ins and outs of plagiarism and academic misconduct, let's take a quiz and win a free button while supplies last. Yes, sharpen your pencil, get out a piece of paper, and get ready. If you do well in the quiz and want to win a free button, just send me an email. I'll get the ball rolling. rsims@centennialcollege.ca, and you could win one of these lovely buttons. Lovin' the libraries. An exclusive offer. Now, let's begin. Have your pencil ready and a piece of paper and jot down the answers. There's 8 questions. It won't take long. Let's get started. 1. In Canada, plagiarism is a crime under the Criminal Code. True or false? Perhaps you're thinking, plagiarism is bad, but is it really that bad? Really? Maybe it is. Question 2. If your professor did not discuss plagiarism and academic dishonesty at the beginning of the course, you cannot be penalized for it. True or false? I wonder how many times this actually occurs. Maybe you missed that class. Maybe the professor just skimmed it. Who knows? I wonder what the answer is. Question 3. If you read a short paragraph on the internet and rewrite it completely in your own words, it no longer needs a citation. True or false? Let's stress the word completely. In other words, if you take a short paragraph and change every single word. You even think up a new word for the. What could the answer be? Question 4. If a Wikipedia article, that fine source of information, if a Wikipedia article has in-text citations and references, you can use that Wikipedia article as a reliable source of information. True or false? In this case, I'm not talking about just any Wikipedia article. I'm talking about ones that have actually undergone a process of research or a process of seeming research. Think about it. Question 5. You have read 7 articles for your major social studies essay. While you have only made use of 4 of them in your essay, the assignment calls for a minimum of 5 sources. To get the most credit for your effort, how many sources should you include in your APA-style reference list? 4, 5, 6, or 7? I'll give you a hint. It's not C. Question 6. You are writing a psychology essay and you have 3 articles. The assignment requires 5 articles and it is due the next day. To save time, you decide to use some of the quotes within the 3 sources you have and cite them as coming from the articles where they were originally found. In other words, Professor Jack Smith writes an essay in which he quotes from an essay written by Professor Mary Jane Bly. You decide to take Professor Bly's quote and reference it as coming from Professor Bly's article. Given the tight time constraints, is this okay to do? Yes or no? Not that long ago, I asked a student the very same question. He said, "Oh yes, I've done that." It's okay, right? Right? Let's find out. Question 7. You're in the research phase of your poetry essay, and you come across a very good article on the internet. On her website, the well-known poet and author of the article, who is also an advocate for information and knowledge sharing, has left the following note. I dedicate my writing to the inspiration of mind and soul. If you read something you like, seize it as your own. Carpe diem. Does this article need a citation? Yes or no? I think this is my favorite part. If you read something you like, seize it as your own. Maybe I'll make that my life's motto. The final question. If you see someone cheating, it is ethical to report it to a professor. Yes or no? Perhaps this has been one of your own experiences. Let's pause for a minute while you check over your answers. Maybe you want to double back and cross out a few things and put some other things in, that sort of thing. Rather than leaving you hanging, let's move forward and take up the questions. Oh, here they are. The quiz in a Word file. Let's have a look and see what's true and what's not true. Okay, number 1. In Canada, plagiarism is a crime under the Criminal Code. Well, it's true that many bad things may happen if you are caught plagiarizing. However, no one is going to jail. The answer is false. You can breathe a sigh of relief. Number 2, if your professor did not discuss academic plagiarism and dishonesty at the beginning of the course, you cannot be penalized. Wouldn't this be wonderful? I guess in an ideal world, wouldn't this be something you could really rely on? But alas, even if your professor did not say a single word about plagiarism, you are still responsible. So again, the answer is false. If you read a short paragraph on the internet and rewrite it completely in your own words, it no longer needs a citation. Even thinking about completely in the sense of creating a new word for the. This is an example of the classic paraphrase. You are using your own words. In fact, you are using all of your own words. However, you are taking or borrowing another person's idea. So yes, it does need a citation. Again, false. Number 4, if a Wikipedia article has in-text citations and references, you can use that Wikipedia article as a reliable source of information. True or false? Let's make the line thicker and say, yes, indeed, this is false. False is the correct answer. Wikipedia is special in the sense that it's an open encyclopedia, one that unfortunately lacks editorial oversight. Number 5, you have read 7 articles for your major social studies essay. While you have only made use, let's stress that, made use of 4 of them in your essay, the assignment calls for a minimum, yes, that's right, we'll stress that, of 5 sources. And we'll stress this, to get the most credit for your efforts, how many sources should you include in your APA reference list? We've already eliminated C. Now, let's see what else we can learn. Even if you've read 100 sources, APA only considers the ones you have actually made use of. So let's eliminate D. Of course, marks are everything in the world of some students, so they may be freaking out about the minimum of 5. However, the greater principle is the APA rule that you only include in your reference list sources you have actually made use of. So B is also incorrect. The correct answer is A, 4. Moving on, question 6. You're writing a psychology essay and you have 3 articles. The assignment requires 5 articles and it is due the next day. To save time, you decide to use some of the quotes within the 3 sources you have and cite them as coming from the articles where they are originally found. We can capture it this way. Again, perhaps making the marker a little bit thinner. We can capture it here. In other words, Professor Jack Smith writes an essay in which he quotes from an essay written by Professor Mary Jane Bly. You decide to take Professor Bly's quote and reference it as coming from Professor Bly's article. We'll highlight this part, as coming from, because you and I both know that you do not read Professor Bly's article. Even given the time constraints, this is definitely not acceptable. It is not acceptable for the obvious reason that it is a misrepresentation, a lie in fact. But for other reasons as well, it's possible that Professor Smith used Professor Bly's quote in a particular way, and you've missed that. Question 7. You're in the research phase of your poetry essay, and you come across a very good article on the internet. On her website, the well-known poet and author of the article, who is also an advocate. Let's change the pen. Make that thicker. Who is also an advocate for information and knowledge sharing, has left the following note. I dedicate my work to the inspiration of mind and soul. If you read something you like, seize it as your own. Carpe diem. Does this article need a citation, yes or no? Even in the spirit of seizing things as your own, we definitely need a citation. It needs a citation for a few reasons, especially the fact that you want to inform your readers of where you found the information so that they or you can carry on your own research or their own research. Finally, question 8. If you see someone cheating, it is ethical to report it to the professor. Yes or no? I'm going to leave that one up to you to decide. Now that we've concluded our talk on plagiarism and academic integrity, I'd like to thank you for joining me. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me at my email address, rsims@centennialcollege.ca. Best of luck, and thank you.